In the coming years, the small trickle of Chinese-developed AAA games we're seeing now is going to become a full avalanche. And like a paragraph that opens with a mixed metaphor, the start of this story is a blend of two distinct things: classic Chinese literature and Dark Souls. Soon, we could end up in a situation where most AAA games development happens in China, a nation with the expertise and enough money sloshing around the system to become a global powerhouse in this particular thing. But where have they been until now? Well, locked behind a lot of regulatory red tape and a general assumption that all China cares about is mobile games and MMOs. These are long-held beliefs that have been shattered forever by the success of Black Myth Wukong, which has stormed up the global charts and in the process woken up the sleeping giant that is China's games industry. And nothing will be the same again. Black Myth Wukong's success is unprecedented for China, a single-player console/PC action game that sold 10 million copies in just 3 days, and remains the second most played game ever on Steam in terms of concurrent players, losing out only to the behemoth that is PUBG. For comparison, its sales are almost equivalent to Elden Ring and Hogwarts Legacy. It won a lot of awards, its physical release has saved businesses, and it's still not out on Xbox, although that will be remedied in August. In short, Game Science's action RPG has been a phenomenon that's arisen amid a shift in the Chinese games industry and caused a global stir. China's games industry has had a much more difficult regulatory journey than most, in part because of the Chinese government's obsessive approvals process for creative works, but mainly the country infamously banning games consoles between the year 2000 and 2015. Since that is lifted, the dominance of mobile games in the country has declined and the popularity of PC and console gaming has risen, fueled further by investments from Chinese conglomerate Tencent and Sony with its PlayStation China Heroes project. Wukong is now considered the country's first AAA release. The total revenue of the Chinese gaming industry has, we're told by one of its leading publishers, increased from 10 billion yuan in 2003 to nearly 400 billion yuan today. And according to the China Audio, Video and Digital Publishing Association, the Chinese player base is around 674 million consumers. For context, the number of gamers in North America is less than half of that. China is very quickly becoming a very important games market. Following in the wake of Black Myth Wukong are a string of other Chinese-developed action RPGs: Phantom Blade Zero, Tides of Annihilation, AI Limit, Lost Soul Aside, Wuchang Fallen Feathers, Echoes of Yi. The list goes on, each with their own unique spin on a familiar genre. Of course, many of these games began development before Wukong was released. Indeed, Lost Soul Aside began development over 15 years ago as a Final Fantasy XV and Devil May Cry inspired fan project. Now, it's finally nearing release at the crest of China's big gaming wave. How has this impacted expectations for Chinese-made games? Well, my colleague Ed Nightingale interviewed 3 big players in the industry, finding out essentially Chinese game development is undergoing a rapid expansion and retooling from something that used to be almost entirely focused on mobile games. In the wake of the runaway success of Black Myth Wukong, the pressure to match or exceed it is at an all-time high, but with that comes a boost in confidence that translates directly into higher budgets, bigger teams, and more job opportunities. It's not that Black Myth Wukong's success magicked the AAA industry out of thin air, obviously. It's that there is now a strong and evidence-based belief that a Chinese-developed AAA game has the potential to do 30 million copies in 6 months, whereas previously the same publishers would have been projecting about a tenth of that and setting their budgets accordingly. Ari Chen, co-CEO and COO of Eclipse Glow Games, the studio behind Tides of Annihilation, made a point of telling us that his team had the expertise to deliver a AAA game long before the success of Black Myth Wukong was on the cards. It's a team made up of industry veterans who've worked on everything from Yakuza to Assassin's Creed. China is becoming a very attractive place to work for veteran overseas talent who keep getting laid off, and it has more capacity to keep its homegrown talent at home. Do you get the feeling that Chinese game development is a bit of a waking tiger? And now, Far from looking at it disdainfully and banning PlayStations, the Chinese government is getting directly involved with gaming. With Phantom Blade Zero, for example, developer S-Game made the decision to use real 3D scans of ancient Chinese buildings, securing extra funding from the Chinese government in the process. And as we all know, the Chinese state loves a bit of soft power, to the point where former British Prime Minister and Aardman character Rishi Sunak ran on the platform of clamping down on it. Yeah, good luck with that, mate. Do you know how many white women love sea drama? Do you know where all our stuff is made? So, why are all of these projects action RPGs? The Chinese games industry is shifting from developing predominantly for smartphones to creating PC and console games. That means bigger budgets, better graphics, and more complex gameplay. I think part of it is cultural. One thing that Black Myth Wukong demonstrates is how much China's geography and mythology lend themselves particularly well to a Souls-like game, for example, which call for gnarly combat against monsters with deep backstories, misty, mossy, crumbling ancient worlds in turmoil, lots of lore to piece together like a big jigsaw that paints a picture so vague that people can spend years arguing about what it all means on Reddit. The imminent Wuchang Fallen Feathers puts a Chinese mythological twist on Souls-like gameplay as well. Phantom Blade Zero blends the combo-driven fighting of Devil May Cry with the interconnected maps of Dark Souls and the creepy atmosphere of Resident Evil. You might wonder if producing so many games ostensibly in the same genre and often being funded by the same investors is good for the Chinese AAA scene. I mean, if they're all vying for the same piece of the same pie, surely the whole thing just eats itself eventually. But Soulframe Lang, the director of Phantom Blade Zero and CEO of the studio making it, assures us that any competition is actually on friendly terms, which is in stark contrast to the days when they were all focused on live service mobile games, which are all fighting for your attention constantly and never end. Whereas when people play a good single-player action adventure that gives them 20 solid hours of a good time and has a definitive ending, that person is free to then go and find another game, and they might look at another Chinese developed ARPG and think, this thing looks similar to the thing I just enjoyed, I'll buy that, and so on and so forth. As he puts it, so if Black Myth Wukong sells pretty well, this will open the market for everyone, because no one is going to play Black Myth Wukong for their lifetime. They will finish the game, and they feel good, and they feel confident about the market and the production of Chinese studios, and they're going to play another Chinese game. I'm not sure how many of your average gamers are sitting there thinking, oh, well, this gives me confidence in the Chinese market. But I get what he's saying, and this might just be wishful thinking or some kind of PR spiel from someone who's very invested in the idea of consumers daisy-chaining the exact thing he's trying to sell, but I think he has a point, and it's just so refreshing to see a CEO talking like this and not wholly committing to the endless war for your attention, your limited waking hours on the planet that entrenched live service games get themselves into, which is exhausting for everyone and has led to a lot of pain in the global games industry, as huge mega-budget projects flop massively and lead to restructuring and layoffs aplenty because of the simple human truth that ain't nobody got time for all this shit.
All these years, except for that pig, you're the one who talks the tallest tales. Good, I am entertained.
In order to grow outward, Chinese games need to target a global audience. Part of their appeal is that they are Chinese and they wear Chinese influences, and often secure funding from the Chinese government on that basis. So there is a delicate balancing act here where the games focus on universal themes like revenge, loyalty and love, and take their gameplay and design cues from well-established genres. So no matter where you are in the world, you will understand the fundamental language of the game while it tells you an authentically Chinese story, just like what Wukong does with Journey to the West, or Monkey as your dad calls it. But Chinese studios can and should take inspiration from Western stories too, in the same way that French developers Slowclap delivered a distinctly Chinese-feeling beat-em-up in Sifu, in the same way Sucker Punch is making wonderful games about historic Japan, in the same way that Ubisoft will make a game set anywhere, like literally anywhere. They don't give a shit about cultural appropriation, so why should anyone else, right? Tides of Annihilation is a great example. This is a Chinese studio taking Welsh deep lore, and it is Welsh, and putting their own spin on it. It uses the legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table as its basis and sets the game in modern day London. Just from the trailers and gameplay shown so far, the environments feature British road signs, bus stops and iconic red post boxes. The team behind it at Eclipse Glow Games, based in Sichuan, are self-professed Anglophiles and visited London during the game's development to learn about local landmarks and get feedback from local residents. A lot of work has gone into making the recognisable parts of this world reasonably faithful to real-life London, and still, the game's elaborate character designs and elegant animations make for an intriguing blend of Eastern and Western iconography. What seems clear, as with so many other industries and general facets of life, is that China is about to become a big global player in gaming, and it's not like it wasn't a huge market before, but now all bets are off, and it seems to me that with the AAA industry collapsing everywhere else as costs go up and everyone's purchasing power goes down and certain major Western governments go all in on protectionism and isolationism, this lucrative new market for big home console and PC games is just good for business. And in the coming years, it might be the only place consistently churning out the types of games we as gamers have been gaslit into believing are an unprofitable niche, but are actually the thing that people miss the most about the good old days: engrossing, engaging single-player experiences with decent production values. You ask anyone, that's what people want. In all the ways in which this industry is changing, a resurgent Chinese sector with proper funding and expertise is one of the most welcome. And with so many Western and Japanese companies ceding ground to the ludicrous proposition of endless live service games, it's encouraging to see a part of the industry waking up from that sort of hell and thinking, hey, let's just make some action RPGs. Imagine that.
Want to boost your game collection and get a great selection of titles every month? Well, now you can with Humble Choice. Every month you get a hand-picked mix of awesome PC games, and this month's lineup is now live. Running through to August the 5th, you can grab Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, Demon Ex Machina, Death's Door, Cat Quest 3, and much more. Whether you're building your backlog or discovering something new, now is the perfect time to pick up these fan favourites. And don't forget that every purchase helps a good cause, with this month's Humble Choice membership supporting Covenant House. Get a curated mix of PC games every month, all for just £8.99 a month. Skip a month or cancel any time, and know that 5% of your membership goes to charity. So if you love discovering great games and doing a little good while you're at it, check out Humble Choice today.